The following public affairs presentation is produced exclusively for the Cox Channel. And now, The Verdict.
And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Meyers, and once again this week Mick Cornett is on the campaign trail, but again I am very pleased to welcome as my co-host Reid Calhoon, a recent Heritage Hall graduate, heading off to Furman University. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
What have you been doing in these weeks?
College preparations. Yeah, I'm...
Well, you're supposed to do that in high school.
Right. Well, I'm really not the one who's preparing. It's more like my mother. Yeah, she...
Are you the last child at home?
Me to be gone. Yeah.
The empty nest will be there.
It's going to be rough for her. Well, that's what she tells me, but I think she'll enjoy it.
Well, today we're going to be talking about the overarching subject of what matters. And I suppose that depends on who you talk to, but who we're going to talk to is a fellow named Tom Price, the Senior Vice President at Chesapeake Energy. He's going to be with us with some ideas for you about what matters. What matters to you, Reid?
Oh, such a complicated question. I don't know if I can answer it. We'll just have to see what he has to say.
Getting through the show is one thing.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to do that fine. We will be back in just a few seconds with Tom Price, and we're going to be talking about what matters. You're watching The Verdict.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers with my co-host Reid Calhoun, and we're very pleased today to welcome back to The Verdict Tom Price, who's sitting on my left. Tom is Senior Vice President for Corporate Development at Chesapeake Energy, and anybody that has been paying attention to the development of Chesapeake Energy knows that Tom has a lot to do because there's a lot of that development going on. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Central Oklahoma and his graduate work at the University of Oklahoma. He's been at Chesapeake since 2003, I guess that's right.
Actually, since 1992.
1992.
That's exactly right.
Well, I missed that by
That's
11
all right,
years.
that's all right,
That's as
that's
close
all right.
as I usually get on
That's
things.
okay.
But I am correct that this is your second visit to The Verdict, and I certainly hope not your last, but welcome back, Tom.
Thank you, Ken.
We're
Thank
pleased
you.
you're here.
Glad to be here.
We're here talking about what matters, and the first thing that you've said matters is ideas. What do you mean by that?
Well, we are at a great point in the history of Oklahoma City, I think. And it's because of ideas having taken root, like maps for kids, ideas like the ability of a couple of young oil and gas people to put a publicly traded oil and gas company together, and all of the manifestations that we're seeing of prosperity in Oklahoma came about because of an idea of one person or an idea that came from a committee. And it's exciting to me to see the enhancement of downtown because of the idea that came about from Ron Norick and a number of other people. It's just exciting to see all the enthusiasm that has that has been created because of one idea. To see now Eisenhower School and John Marshall that are going to open in the fall, to see new school buildings, and as much as anything, the idea that we can recapture the passion and recapture the quality in our public schools in Oklahoma City because of the buy-in, because of the ideas of a number of people in communities around Oklahoma City and in their neighborhoods who all were involved in this idea of Maps for Kids. I think it's extraordinarily powerful.
And tell us about your ideas in working with government.
Well, I think that government is a tool that is funded by all of us as taxpayers to try to help us deal with issues that individuals and private enterprise typically don't want to deal with. Infrastructure, for example. I think that there are a lot of good ideas that are out at the Capitol. Unfortunately, sometimes they get bogged down in whether they are Republican or Democrat ideas. I've often said that I thought that if we had more ideas in the political arena that were akin to what we do with a scramble in a golf tournament. That is, if you all play golf, and I don't play very much, but you play the best ball that's hit. You don't play the best ball that's hit by a Republican or by a Democrat or by the boss. You play the best ball that's hit. And I think that that's an idea that I'd love to see somehow, and that may be a little bit of a dream. But there are a lot of great people with great ideas out at the Capitol, and I think that the private sector, by working closely with the public sector, that maybe we can help them get a little bit more lift to some of those ideas.
Tom, let me follow up on that with your own company, Chesapeake's ideas. It's the ideas that surround your campus are just unbelievable. If anyone has driven by your business location at basically 63rd and Western,
right,
and the surrounding area, they see buildings going up, beautiful, attractive buildings going up in place of things that weren't quite nearly as attractive.
Right.
What's the idea about the way you're building your campus? What's the corporate philosophy there?
I think the main thing is that we feel like that we provide the best working environment in Oklahoma. And we also think that because of the last 15 years of challenge in the oil and gas industry, that we didn't have many young people get in to our business. People didn't want to become oil and gas finders, either as engineers.
Hard work.
It is hard. Well, I mean, but even as engineers, geologists, landmen, accountants, there are some very well-paying jobs, but people thought that maybe there was there's a disconnect between the opportunity, I think, and the perception of the industry. So we set about to create the best working environment we thought in Oklahoma. And we want people to be very proud of the company that they work for.
Well, discuss the working environment a little more. Tell our viewers, you did it once before slightly on the last show you were on many months ago. Refresh our viewers' memory about that.
Well, our working environment is a campus, college campus type environment, where we have about 30 acres right there at the corner of 63rd and Western, goes down to 59th and over to Class, and have some other properties that are on the outside of that. But we are determined to have a relatively low-rise complex. That is, we don't want to have a stratification between the people that are on the first floor and the people that are on the 50th floor. So we don't have a 50th floor. We go at our maximum to 5 floors. But what's interesting is our CEO is in the original building that we were in on the 2nd floor. So there really, at Chesapeake, there really is no distinction between a person who's just at an early level in their career, and people that have been there for since the beginning, like a handful of the rest of us. We want people to feel valued. We want them to feel important because their contributions they are what enable us to continue to grow, to continue to drill wells in Oklahoma, to continue to create job opportunity for our best and brightest to stay right here in Oklahoma.
So Chesapeake not only inculcates the idea that ideas matter in the state and in the city, but in their own house.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we'll want to expand on this a little bit more in the next segment.
Great.
But let's get us to a break.
Thanks.
We're visiting with Tom Price with my co-host Reid Calhoun. You're watching The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers with Reid Calhoun, and today we're joined by Tom Price, the Senior Vice President for Corporate Development at Chesapeake Energy, talking about what matters. I know one thing you listed, Tom, that you felt like mattered was leadership. How can you expand on that?
Well, I think that we have been so fortunate here in Oklahoma City to have great leadership. We've got our industry in particular is one that I'm, of course, more familiar with than any other. But you look at the leaders that we've got with Aubrey McClendon, Larry Nichols, and Luke Corbett, and their commitment to doing things that help our community grow and prosper. It's not just about their companies individually. It's about making a statement of the energy industry's recognition of its responsibility and its opportunity to make the community better. And we've been involved in several different efforts where we have combined with those two companies as well as OG&E and the Oklahoman and others to recognize, for example, BRAC. That was a tremendous contribution that a lot of people made, and we all joined together.
The Base Realignment Commission, the Tinker effort.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that our thought is that there's always credit enough to go around when good things are accomplished, and that's why we say we think leadership matters.
Well, Oklahoma City, as I agree, has been blessed with leaders for a number of years. You mentioned Ron Norick earlier.
Sure.
Back in the formation days of MAPS and MAPS for Kids, and of course subsequent mayors, and not to leave out our normal co-host.
Sure.
Or our regular co-host,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say normal co-host, Mick Cornett. But the leadership in the city that has welled up has carried this city forward when others have not fared so well.
I think so, and one always makes a mistake of trying to name all of the various great leaders that we've had, but I think our city has been extraordinarily fortunate I spent time as a kid in Tulsa and loved that city, but I think that that we can look with great pride at how our city has been able to come together and work in the spirit of just progress, and have resisted calls for conflict or calls to separate based on political party. We've stayed focused to really the center of the bullseye, and it's something I think has benefited our city greatly.
Well, we haven't mentioned Bricktown really, but that has shown a great, that development is an example of great leadership as well, and the development of the Deep Deuce area.
Yeah, it really is, and I think it is an example of what happens when leaders go to the people and explain to them what can happen if the city invests in itself and is willing to tax itself. And tax increases are not typically popular, but I think that is where leadership really matters. If one can create a picture that people can reach out and say, that's the model, that's what's going to happen when this comes together, I think a lot of people grab a hold of that, and that's why I think we've got such a successful effort with Maps for Kids as well. Is the taxpayers saw that when these things are done right, that they really enhance the livability and the quality of life in our city.
Think back, if you will, on the development of the proposal to develop the Ford Center right next door to what was then, I guess, called the Marriott. Now it's very appropriately called the Cox Center.
Yeah.
We're very grateful to Cox. They produce our show. But
They're great leaders too.
They are indeed. The Ford Center was proposed as a giant new arena with nobody knowing necessarily what was going to happen there, but it was almost build it and they will come attitude, and sure enough it has. It's booked solid almost year round with such things as the Hornets and others.
Right.
That was a terrific leap of faith that the citizens took when they voted to approve that funding.
Yeah, and I would be very much remiss if I didn't mention Clay Bennett. What a great leader in terms of the work that he had done in bringing the Hornets to Oklahoma City, along with, as you said, Mayor Cornett, City Manager Couch. There's a whole lot of people. The point is, it's never just one person. It's leadership, and it is always critical.
Yeah.
And the third thing you've mentioned that matters is compassion matters, and you've spoken about organization that strengthens the quality of life. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think if you look at the efforts of the United Way, if you look at that group and so many other efforts around the city that have been focused on helping those in need, a city has got to have not only a brain, but it's got to have a heart. And I think that our city has shown time and time again that it is willing to reach down and make those investments that it needs to make in terms of helping, whether it be through organizations like I mentioned, the United Way, Allied Arts, Salvation Army, and again, one could go on, but Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, those are all efforts that try to fill the gap that really can't be filled very effectively by the public sector. And so it's a combination of efforts, private corporations and individuals, and the many great foundations that we've got around this community that have great heart and have the compassion that's needed to help those engender some pride in themselves and some passion about their own lives, that then they can join with others in the community to really care and enhance the quality of life in this community.
And speaking of compassion, tell us about this Chesapeake Scholars Program. That's
a program that we initiated a few years ago. The majority of money that we spend in the state, probably in conflict with most people's thought that all we do is spend money there on our beautiful campus at 63rd and Western. We spend most of our money drilling wells across Oklahoma. And because we do that, we want for those young people who live in rural Oklahoma to have an opportunity to get a good education. And obviously there are some great institutions of higher learning here in Oklahoma.
The to harken back a little bit to the United Way and Allied Arts, it struck me as kind of unusually good that both those organizations exceeded their goals this year by more than they ever have in the past. They raised more money not only for the poor and unfortunate and the needy through United Way,
Right.
but through development of the arts than the Allied Arts. I mean, this community gives to all sorts of things.
It really does, and if I could just put a plug in for my friends in the energy industry, we'd made an extra effort to go out and try and remind those in the energy industry that, as the saying goes, to those that much is given, much is expected. And we had a great outpouring of contributions from people in the energy industry, and obviously it came from a lot of different areas, but I'd just like to say thanks to those in the energy industry who stepped up and got involved for the first time, and thanks to all of those that contributed, as you said, to take the effort at Allied Arts over its goal. We were really proud of it. It was a great job by David and Ann.
Well, Tom, we are out of time, but I thank you so much for joining us. Reid and I are very pleased to have you. We want to ask you back in a few months and find out what's going on in the energy industry.
A great pleasure.
We are watching The Verdict today, and we're visiting with Tom Price. We'll be right back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Kent Meyers with Reid Calhoun, finishing up this segment of The Verdict. Tom Price, a very thoughtful guy, very busy, working with a huge organization like Chesapeake. Mm-hmm. Very pleased he would come on again and remind us of the corporate citizenship that we have in Tulsa and Oklahoma mm-hmm. City, and around the state for that matter, but our focus a little more on those two communities. What do you think about this idea or what do you think about the concept of ideas?
Well, yeah, I think he hit it on the head, in that, yeah, ideas are definitely important, but without the implementation to really go through with them, they can sometimes get lost in your day-to-day life and things like that.
I can recall the late Neil Horton talking to me, a friend of mine who now deceased was a banker in Oklahoma City, talking to me about something in the late 60s that he called Bricktown. And at that time, that was just a warehouse district in southeast Oklahoma mm-hmm. City that was pretty run down, almost not occupied at all, and he had a concept, he had an idea of how that could be made into a retail and commercial area that would draw people back downtown, and quite frankly, a lot of people scoffed at that. Neil passed away too soon to see it develop as it has, but that was a great idea, and he was prepared as a developer to try to implement it. Others picked up the idea and carried it forward. But I completely agree with your idea that ideas by themselves, while they're wonderful and mm-hmm. exciting, unless you're willing to sweat the sweat and do the work to carry them out, to make them come to life, they're not nearly as productive elements of society as they are otherwise. Well, I want to thank Reid Calhoun for being with me as a co-host on these last 3 weeks. I hope to get him back before he runs off to South Carolina. Oh, yeah. I wish you the best.
Oh, thank you.
I wish you good luck in your schooling. You'll do fine if you just remember everything you did on this show the last 3 weeks and don't ever do it again. You'll be doing fine in broadcasting. Yeah. For Reid Calhoun, this is Kent Meyers. Thank you for watching us on The Verdict. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.